Waterloo Uncovered have returned to the battlefield for the first time since 2019, when operations were curtailed by COVID. But that was a really exciting season. We found down at Mont Saint-Jean, the farm which was Wellington's main field hospital, the remains of 3 amputated legs lying beside in what looked like a ditch running alongside the old road. And we fully excavated those. They went off to the laboratory in Brussels for examination, and one of them was found to have a French musket ball lodged in it. So an incredible discovery, obviously related to the activities in the hospital. And these legs had been unceremoniously dumped on top of what we now know to be the tin boxes which are in the cartridge cases which each soldier would have carried. And if a soldier was wounded and taken to the hospital, obviously all of his kit would have been taken off him so he could have been treated. And it's reckoned that upwards of 500 limbs, that's arms and legs, were cut off by the surgeons at the hospital during the day of the battle, and thousands of men were tended there. And it was quite clear from that excavation that there was more to come. But we didn't have time to excavate anymore, so it was very much business unfinished. And so 2022, we came back, and it was one of the areas that we targeted, and very quickly started to uncover more remains. We did see, when we put in that excavation trench in 2019, animal bones, which we thought to be horse. That was quickly confirmed, and we now have 3 almost complete horse carcasses or skeletons. And incredibly, we've also got a complete human skeleton. And lying alongside that, we've got another amputated leg. Now, we don't think anymore that this is just a roadside ditch which has had material dumped into it. We think it is a purposely dug trench for the disposal of remains. And those remains include animals in the form of the horses, and the amputated limbs, and an entire corpse. Now we know that human skeleton is a male. We can already tell it's a very small male, gracile as we would say in archaeological terms or anthropological terms. Excavation there is continuing. We don't know the cause of death. We don't know whether this was a soldier that died under the surgeon's knife, or whether it was a soldier that was killed outright on the battlefield and brought to that place. The horses, we think, tell a different story. We know that thousands of horses were killed in the battle, thousands were injured, and obviously with an injured horse at that time, the natural thing to do would be to put it down. And it looks very much as though these horses, very badly wounded, we can see the damage to one leg on one animal. It looks as though they've been led into this trench and then they've been shot, we think, in the head. Gary has put the metal detector over the skeletons, and it certainly sounds as though there is a lead musket ball in the skull area, but they are still undergoing excavation. Now, that whole sequence of events, the amputated limbs, the disposal of an entire human corpse, and the animals, is, as far as I can see, unique. They seem to have dug this pit deliberately. It's long. We know it continues on both sides. The interesting thing is, the animals seem to be in one part of the trench and the human remains in another, and they are both separated by that mound of tins from the cartridge cases. So what we're thinking at the moment is, if we go back there next year, if we dig on one side, we will find more human remains, and on the other we will find more animals. So it's an incredible site, and as we've already identified, burials on Waterloo battlefield are very rare. Dom excavated one individual when he was doing a monitoring brief on the building of the museum some years back. But other than that, this is the first time, or the second time, that a human body has been excavated by archaeologists on Waterloo battlefield. We've been here since 2015. We've done a lot of digging in and around Hougoumont on geophysical anomalies. We've dug in areas where we've got eyewitness accounts of burials taking place, and even paintings showing the burials happening. Again, we found nothing. So it's a bit of a mystery as to where all of those graves are. Upwards of 20,000 soldiers were killed in the battle. As I've said, thousands of horses were killed and wounded. And we think what might be happening with these grave pits, some of which might have had hundreds of men in them, is in the years following the battle, people have come back and they've literally quarried those graves and taken the bones. They've been shipped over to the UK, at least some of them, and they've there been ground up into dust. And that dust has been spread on the fields as fertilizer. And that would explain why the discovery we've made in 2022 is so unique on the battlefield. But that said, it's also, in its own details, unique for any Napoleonic battlefield. There are other graves on other battlefields, Austerlitz, for instance, Wagram, but this is the first time we've got this long pit with animals in one end and what looks like to have humans. We've got one and possibly more skeletons in the other side. So that's been amazing. We're still excavating that skeleton. What we've also done is opened up investigations down at Plancenoit. Now, Plancenoit is a village on the southern part of the battlefield. It was behind Napoleon's line during the day of the battle, and it's where the Prussians arrived later in the day. And that village was fought over incredibly viciously by the French and the Prussians. It changed hands several times. Napoleon sent in his young guard and then some of his older guard, so his elite troops are being sent in to try and push those Prussians back. Eventually, the Prussians captured the village, and by that time, Napoleon had played his last card with his advance of his Imperial Guard up onto Wellington's left. And they were then retreating, and we're talking here about 8 o'clock at night. They're retreating off the field. The Prussians have pushed the French out of the village, and the general French retreat begins. Now, at Plancenoit, we've been doing geophysics. We've got this big ongoing project where geophysics is being carried out all across the battlefield. It's very exciting. We've got a number of anomalies, and they are being tested through trenching, through excavation. Thus far, at Plancenoit, we've got an old wall which has been robbed out, so we've just got the trench of the wall, and various other anomalies which could be natural. We've also been doing metal detecting down there, and we've got an amazing array of finds, including Prussian musket balls, French artillery shot, all sorts of material. We've also been detecting in the fields to the south of Mont Saint-Jean, on the reverse slope where Wellington's main position was, and again, a vast array of material, including artillery shell fragments, musket balls. I've heard today we've even got a French cap badge. So really exciting. The project has really come on this year, and it's almost been worth waiting those 2 years to come back.